Well, good morning. It's Monday, May the 11th. I'm Pastor Roddy Chesser with Open Door Family Fellowship in San Angelo, Texas. This is Pandemic Preaching. Thinking about 2 Timothy this morning. The Apostle Paul, and he's writing this letter to Timothy. This is one of the last letters he's going to write. He's locked up in jail. He's on his way out. He says, I've fought the good fight. I've finished the course. He knows that he's not going to get out of jail this time. It wasn't like when he wrote Philippians and Colossians. And he's encouraging this young preacher. And he tells him this. He says, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. You know, it's the encouragement of a guy who was a tent maker. The Apostle Paul, it says, that was his trade. And so not only had he trained with Gamaliel studying the scriptures, but he had also trained and apprenticed as a tent maker. And tent makers in Paul's day and time, well, they would have used a lot of the materials would have been made out of spun goat's hair. And it would have been a real thick burlap kind of a canvas type natural material that they built those tents out of. And so as he's encouraging Timothy, one of the things he says, I want you to study to show thyself approved unto God. Hey, don't just assume that your opinions matter to people. You know, our opinions as pastors, preachers, teachers of the Word of God, our opinions are just like everybody else's. Maybe they're based on fact and maybe they're not. But what he was encouraging Timothy to do was study the Word of God. Study, be diligent to dig into the Word. Study the Word. Study it in context. Don't yank things out of context. That's what Peter said that people were doing with Paul's writings. They said they would wrest the scriptures or they would twist them to make them say what they wanted them to say. Instead, he says, I want you to study to show yourself approved unto God. Greek word is dokimos. It's something that they would have put a stamp on something. This is approved. This is something that has been tested and it's good. You can merchandise this. You can use this. And so he says, I want you to be a workman that needeth not to be ashamed. Now, what is it that would make a workman ashamed? Well, it's real simple. It's shoddy workmanship. That's what makes a workman ashamed. You know, the Apostle Paul, he probably would have worked with some leather as well. I do some leather work, and you know, we use tools. I'm gonna cut out a sweat leather for a saddle, and I guarantee you, I'm not gonna eyeball this thing. I'm gonna use some wing dividers. I'm gonna use a compass. I'm gonna use a knife. I'm gonna use some straight edges. I'm going to measure several times. You've heard the old expression, measure twice and cut once. Well, that's exactly what Paul is saying that we need to do when we handle the Word of God. He says, if you don't rightly divide the Word of God, and that means cut it straight. So you're gonna lay out a line. Boy, I mean, anybody who does any kind of workmanship knows that you need to get things square, level, and plumb. It's absolutely essential. If you're going to build a wall, if you're going to frame a deck, if you're going to frame a house, if you're going to cut out some tent material to build a tent with, as the Apostle Paul would have done. And if you use shoddy workmanship, you're not going to cut it straight. And so what the Apostle Paul is saying is he's saying, hey, when you handle the Word of God, you need to cut it straight. You need to make sure that you've laid out a straight line. You need to make sure and measure everything out. Make sure that you are handling it in a way. The Bible says that those who teach the Word of God are going to be held to a higher standard. It actually encourages us, says not many of you should be masters. Master, in other words, the master's level of teaching somebody who is underneath you. It's important that you and I handle the Word of God. When we teach people, we need to make sure. That's why we need to be diligent. Listen, I can't encourage you enough. Get into the Bible. You say, I'm not a teacher. Yes, you are. You're a teacher by your life. If you're a parent, you're a teacher of your children. If you're a husband, you're supposed to be able to help your wife to understand the Bible and have Bible discussions with her. You need to be able to understand the Word of God, to apply it to the current situation of life around us. we all need to study the Word of God. Don't be doing shoddy workmanship. Don't be shooting from the hip on this situation. Hey, get in there and be diligent. Study the Word of God. Lay out a straight line on that thing and make sure that you cut it straight. God bless you. I love you. Hope you have a great day.